We got our first look of Jayson Tatum on the Celtics over the weekend. In what ways is his role going to be the same? In what ways is it going to be different? And just how good is the Celtics team? Plus, the Pistons are slumping. The Heat are streaking. And a whole lot more of interesting NBA games from over the weekend to talk about. This is the Monday edition of the All-NBA Show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by a recovering Jayson Timpf, who's joining us. What a weekend for you picked to get sick, man. It was like a jam-packed weekend in the NBA.
I know. I was lamenting to Adam before we got started that ever since I moved to Denver, I've just been getting sick nonstop because I don't know if I must have like conquered every germ that existed in Tucson. So I was just like, I had that under control, and then I've come here and I've completely lost it. And of course, I wait all this time to go to a Nuggets game, and I'm pretty sure that the Nuggets game on Thursday was where I got sick. But the upside was, as I was bedridden, or I should say couch-ridden in my basement all day yesterday, was we had an awesome slate of NBA games, and I just laid down and alternated between taking naps and watching basketball all day yesterday. So we're here, we're doing it. If there was one upside, it was that I was forced to be parked in front of a TV.
All right, so the Lakers defense made you sick. Is this what I understand? you watched them up close, and you're like, makes me sick. No, we got a great show, man, because this weekend in the NBA was really fascinating. Obviously, Jayson Tatum, we're going to spend a lot of time on him today in the opening segment, but there was also some interesting stuff with the Pistons. We're going to talk about the Spurs just crushing the Rockets, completely outclassing them. And then the Lakers get a dominant win over the Knicks. Is that something or nothing? We'll get to all those games today on the show, but we're going to start with our FanDuel game breakdown. This is, of course, presented by FanDuel. You can sign up using that code ALLNBA. Let's get into this one here because Celtics get the win, and it really was a blowout win. The final score reflects this a little bit, 109-98, but it really was much more of a blowout than even that. They were up 81-55 with 4 minutes left in the third. But the storyline is that Jayson Tatum returned. He had a monster first quarter. Well, first of all, he was back before. This is his second game back. But in this game, he had a monster first quarter, and he had a pretty good, I would say. I was listening to some of the pods earlier, some other pods, and I was reading articles and a lot of commentary about, man, he looks so back, like he hadn't missed a step. When I watched the game, I was like, he still looks like he's ramping up to me. But it was very impressive. He's at a very good starting point. So what stood out to you about Jayson Tatum and the Celtics in this one?
Yeah, so Tatum, I want to kind of set to the side because I think that there's like really positive trends with Tatum, but I didn't think Tatum was as big of a factor specifically in this Cavs game. But like the first thing is like he fundamentally alters their physical profile with their lineups. Like they didn't have a legitimate power forward. They had guys who were filling that gap in various ways, and there's been a rise of like useful wings for Boston this year, guys like Jordan Walsh, guys like Baylor Shireman, and Baylor I think is pretty big, and Jordan Walsh is a very good athlete, but neither of them are your stereotypical like refrigerator NBA power forward, like a dude who's like a legit 6'9", 6'10", who's got broad shoulders and is filled out and can like do all the things that you need from that type of position. And immediately you just look at the Celtics and they just look different physically as a team when he's out there. And the biggest thing is this is a team that for the most part this season has really struggled on the defensive glass. Again, only a 2-game sample, but when Jayson Tatum's been on the floor so far, they're grabbing over 81% of their opponent's misses, which is like an outstanding number. So the defensive rebounding has been very strong. He hasn't shot the ball super well as he's worked his way back for obvious reasons. He's adjusting to NBA speed. He's getting his rhythm back, all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure you noticed this, Adam. Jayson Tatum had about 10 passes from the 2 games where you're like, oh, no one on the Celtics was making that pass before this sequence. We're like, I really feel like we're going to see an improvement for the Celtics against the better defenses now that Tatum's back, because he just kind of applies so much of a different pressure on the defense with his playmaking. And, for how good this Celtics team has been And again, they've been the second best net rating team in the NBA, so second behind OKC, fourth best record in the league. But they haven't been as good against the best teams this year. Like they're 1-3 against the Pistons, 0-2 against the Nuggets, 1-2 against the Knicks. Just in the last month, they've been blown out at home by the Knicks and the Hornets, and they had that bad loss in Denver. So like they've struggled a little bit against the best teams. They're 9-10 against teams in the top 10 in point differential, a negative 1.4 point differential in those games. I think where we're really going to see the kind of value of Tatum is in games like yesterday when they play against the better teams in the league. He's just going to fill a lot of the holes that some of the best teams can exploit. And I do want to dive into the Cavs game specifically eventually, but I think overall just Tatum being back changes the Celtics by filling all of these important gaps.
I like it as a leading point, to be honest with you. First, on the rebounding front, some of this is just that he provides rebounding himself. I mean, he's tall, he's athletic, he can get up for boards. But I think another thing that stood out to me about this last game was he is another perimeter containment body that has this enormous length. And when you're able to keep the defense in front of you, you know, everybody. So everybody has to guard on the perimeter, but when it's another guy that can just keep the ball out of the paint, you're naturally have a shell built to rebound as a team because you're not having to scramble and chase guys around. And I think that was a big thing that stood out for me there was you're just looking at a long, tall, athletic guy that is another body for perimeter containment, and all of the Celtics players defend. I mean, I want to talk about that part of this later on and really dive into it, but it's crazy how many guys are able to defend. Even guys that I don't think are great defenders defend at a very high level for them. But then you talk about the personality of the team, and to me what stood out about what he provides, they take some crazy shots, the Celtics, and it's part of their genius is that they have the freedom to get shots because they know exactly what type of shots they're allowed to take. And when you know what type of shots you're allowed to take, you can take a wide open version of that shot or you can take a contested version because it's like, this is our shot. So they can have a quick trigger. Tatum allows them to have more open shots, and he is just such a good shot creator. He didn't make his threes in both of these two games. He goes 2 of 9 in this one against Cleveland. But the shots he took are shots that are contested threes off the dribble, kind of his little hezzy go into it, where he's so tall, the release point is so high, and he's such a good shooter that I watch those and I go, yeah, those are going to probably go in for him at some point this year. And those are the types of shots that if he's not taking them, Hauser maybe is taking those and they're 10% worse. And so that's what stood out to me, not the effectiveness of it. I want to talk about his driving and some of the other stuff because that was really impressive, but his ability to get clean looks just basically whenever he wants, right off of coming back from injury, is so impressive and so helpful for them based on the style of offense that they play.
Yeah, to your point, like that specific thing, the ISO threes is something that he does that really no one else on the team can do at a super high level except for maybe Peyton Pritchard in terms of like the just dribble combinations into those pull-ups. I was thinking a lot about this actually today because, with Jaylen Brown, I was thinking, I think Tatum, would you agree with me? Actually, let me just pitch this to you first. I think Tatum is a more complete offensive player when he's healthy and in rhythm, like all around offensive player with like all the different ways that he can impact offense. Would you agree with that?
Tatum? Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So it's funny because the specific skill of like attacking smaller defenders in matchup situations, I actually do think Jaylen Brown's a little better. And the main reason why is because he's got a quicker first step. He's actually good at getting those matchups south of the foul line. And then when he gets south of the foul line, he's just so incredibly gifted as a little short range shot maker. And so it's interesting because like, I think in a weird way, the two of them, their games can complement each other really well in the sense that when they are playing a team like Cleveland, for example, Jaylen Brown is just so proficient attacking their smaller guards in the middle of the floor. It works so well. But then like all of these other elements of the game, whether it's just making the early decisions in the possession that capitalize on a defensive mistake or a way a team is guarding them, like you said, the ISO threes, the inverted action that he'll run with Derek White, or when he sets screens for Derek White, like the 1-3 little ball screens that they run. There's just so many like other little ways that Jayson Tatum can kind of influence things on offense that, again, I think he's just going to be like kind of picking his spots and filling gaps for this group. But at the same time, it's like Jaylen Brown is still your guy when it's like there's a matchup on the floor that we can hunt, and we can just go to the middle of the floor the way that they did over and over again against Cleveland.
Well, the nice thing about the who is your guy conversation, Jaylen Brown, was it his second quarter, third quarter, was just absolutely incredible. And it was a point where the game kind of got close. I mean, Boston had a nice rhythm in the first half. They needed to reestablish that rhythm at a certain point. And he was unbelievable as just like, okay, let me settle things down. We all felt good for a half. Things are slipping. Let me settle things down. And he hit so many tough shots, just incredible ISOs in a row that put this game completely out of reach. But yeah, Tatum's pull up threes, the way he draws, or the way he gives them just another option, is so it just makes them so dynamic. Here's a question I have for you. Actually, I'll go here first. Boston, to me, I was thinking about this. That game was completely played on Boston's terms. And Cleveland, for one, they couldn't, because I think just the nature of the Boston switch defense, there was no ball movement. It turned into an ISO fest for Cleveland, which they can play. They have some ISO players, but it really was on Boston's terms. And then I was thinking, that's why Boston's so great. Of the teams who most impose their style on the game, Boston, OKC, I think they might be 1-2. Like those two teams, when you play them, you're playing their style, you're playing their pace, they control. You're not going to be able to really change them too much. I think the Knicks, for the most part, also have this, in large part because you could put the ball in Jalen Brunson's hands and he's hard to take the ball away from, so he's going to be able to control and dictate. San Antonio, sneaky, is getting into this. Now, they can play a lot of different styles, so I don't know if they fit here, but they are becoming a team that can dictate how you're going to play on offense for sure. And then lastly, I put on here Charlotte. I've just watched Charlotte a bunch where I watch and go, wow, Charlotte kind of controlled how that game was going to go. Who else would you put on this list? And is Boston number one for you in terms of when you play them, it's going to be a Boston Celtics style game?
That's a good question. OKC is another one that I would consider, in the sense they can similarly, they're going to get into the way that they want to attack you on both ends of the floor. I think honestly that's really the big thing with Boston's approach that I think you're getting at, that I think is super important. There's so many wasted possessions you'll see with teams that struggle with this dynamic, where with Boston, they can be so incredibly relentless attacking the thing that they view as their advantage. So for instance, there was a third quarter stretch in the game yesterday where Jaylen Brown goes oh, Dean Wade can't guard me. And so then it's just over and over and over again, every time down the floor, they just go to the same thing. And that really ends up, you want to talk about dictating the pace or dictating the flow of the game. So much of that comes down to, do you do it on every single possession? Do you do the thing that you're good at on every single possession? So on defense, for example, the ball pressure and, the mix of, like you said, all the switching 1 through 4. And then Boston's run a ton of deep drop coverage with their centers this season too. They have very consistent defensive execution. And then on the offensive end of the floor, they'll probe a little bit early in the game, but as they're probing, they find okay, here are the 2 or 3 things that if we do this, we're going to get a great shot every time. And then they just spam it and they repeat it and they run it over and over and over again. And one of the things I think is really stood out to me about Boston, and a big part of why I think that, and by the way, they've been skyrocketing up championship odds. I think they're tied for the second best odds right now in the league.
Rightfully so, man. I mean, I'm watching them and they're in that tier 1 to me, and just how consistent they can play their brand of elite basketball. So it makes sense. Yeah.
And I'm watching, and it's every Celtics lineup has, because Jayson Tatum's back now, every Celtics lineup has a forward who can match up attack, either Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum, a guard who can run action, either Derek White or Peyton Pritchard, and 2 dudes who are either awesome offensive rebounders or awesome shooters. So even if it's Hugo Gonzalez or Jordan Walsh, they're just so impactful as athletes. But lately it's been a lot of guys Sam Hauser and Baylor Shireman. And it's I'm watching these sequences and I'm, the Hauser gets a couple threes in that second half stretch and they're wide open. And a big reason for that is Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum are applying so much pressure in the middle of the floor that the entire defense is collapsing around them. And there's another angle to get through here, like James Harden was guarding Sam Hauser for much of the game, and James Harden is just such an inattentive off-ball defender. That's the one thing that can be really frustrating with him, and he lost Hauser a few times. But there are several other sequences where I'm like, Jaylen Brown's going to get a layup if you don't collapse the way that you're collapsing. And as soon as you collapse, Boston just has this sequence of events where they always make the extra pass. They always have their spacing set up in a way that they're going to get an open three out of what they got. Now, I do think that Cleveland's poor shooting played a little bit of a role. Like, especially in that second quarter, it was almost like you could tell every successive miss was just sapping Cleveland of their confidence. And there's definitely a version of that game where Cleveland shoots the ball better and it's more close and more competitive. Jared Allen was out. So, like, obviously you add in the part where Evan Mobley is not able to get deployed on the perimeter as much because he's having to anchor things under the basket. But that problem still exists, which is if you can't guard Boston's main shot creators one-on-one, they are going to space the floor and they're going to get really high quality threes on you. And when they get the high quality threes, they're going to go in. Like the games where Boston ends up shooting poorly, it's usually because they're not breaking the defense down effectively. It's not because they're just missing open shots. Boston doesn't have too many games where they just miss open shots. It's usually they're not getting very good shots. And so they'll go, like you mentioned, Boston, to their own detriment, sometimes will take very difficult threes, and that can lead to them having really cold shooting nights. But for the most part, it's Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum working in the middle of the floor, drawing a bunch of attention, and that's all really good. You leave Baylor Shireman open, it's going in.
Yeah.
You leave Sam Hauser open, it's going in. You leave Peyton Pritchard open, it's going in. It's very much a system that works when they execute it properly.
And it's on both ends of the floor. So to your point, their offense has that identity that's very consistent. They just don't fall out of that rhythm. They keep doing it. They'll miss shots or something, and maybe a great defense can contain them, but they continue to do what they do. And then on the defensive end, it's the same thing. And one of the things that stood out to me about this game was as the game wore on, Cleveland just started taking threes early in the shot clock. Yep. And I think they did it because it's exhausting to try to go against them when you're not having success. That you feel like if I get a tiny amount of light, a sliver of light, I'm going to let this go because my other option is to grind out 18 seconds for this exact same shot. And so they took a lot of just quick threes that felt a little bit like, well, we're not getting anything better than this. And they just were obviously cold for most of this game. But again, that's a mental advantage. Watching Cleveland, I felt like they were worn down and not feeling very hopeful, I guess, in their process. But then we talk about the central question here, which is, how is Tatum's role going to be the same and how is it going to be different? One thing, and then I'll start in this way. Tatum is fresh back. There's not a lot of scouting on him. I think everybody, even including the opponents he's going against, are still wondering what kind of player he is. And, so I think teams will adjust. I was surprised that Cleveland that allowed him to bring the ball up the floor. Because to me, if you're thinking about a guy coming back from injury, one of the number one things you can do is put stress on his legs, like really pressure him full court and just let's test him. He's probably going to get tired early. He's probably not going to have the same burst, around you to get all the way to the basket. And Cleveland's pickup points were really low, basically the 3-point line for most of this game. I think that's going to change. I think that's one thing as I was watching the game, I was thinking, I'll bet teams are going to start to just not let him initiate the offense from half court or just even dribble the ball all the way up.
To your point, Boston never lets anybody get away with that. They're one of the better ball pressure teams in the league in terms of getting up into the basketball. But yeah, you sent this to me yesterday there in the text message when we were kind of talking about the show. You were like, what are the ways that people will stress test Tatum? And I do think it's worth mentioning where Missoula is not using him to guard centers yet. He's stashing him away. He spent most of the game on Dean Wade yesterday, stashing him on like off-ball shooter types where he will get brought into action and attacked on occasion, but he's not being asked to do a ton defensively right now. That will increase in time. Like, I think that's smart, by the way. I wouldn't have Jayson Tatum banging with centers on the glass right now.
So straight on his body.
Yeah, I'd give him a little while, but ultimately I think you're right. Ball pressure and then also forcing him to guard on the other end. Like just not because you think he's necessarily the best option to attack, but because you're trying to just stress test him the way you said. Like essentially like force Tatum to do a lot physically during this phase when he doesn't really have his legs underneath him.
And it's kind of a simple thing. If I just told you you're coming back from injury, your first game's back, would you rather be full court pressed or not? The answer for everybody would be probably not if I'm coming back from injury. So I think just testing him there and seeing how well he holds up and if it throws off his rhythm a little bit. So how do you expect his role to be the same? And I'll start with this one. I did not expect him to drive as much as he was driving in these first two games. And he had some drives against rim protection and would go up strong and finished. And I was really impressed with that. So that's one area I would have said he's probably not going to be doing as much of, but I actually think that will be the same. I think he will get to a point where he's driving comfortably.
Yeah, so he's 5 for 7 at the rim so far and 4 for 5 on layups. That's actually, again, very small sample size, but last year was his best rim finishing season. He got up to about 65%. So I think that would have been an area where you would have expected him to not look very good, and he's looked very good. I think now, again, it was if I remember correctly, it was his right Achilles that he tore, not his left Achilles. So I don't think he jumped off of that foot when he missed the dunk, but he's still splitting the ball screen and then planting that right foot to set up for his left foot. I thought that was a strong sign that he's feeling very confident in his body to make explosive moves. To your point, he had one yesterday, I think it was against Mobley, where he drove left down the lane line and got into Mobley's body and kind of fought him off and then was able to get a scoop shot in off the glass. And I'm like, that's a contact finish in traffic against a rim protector. That's a very
he was feeling
indicator.
it too. Like, you could tell that play meant something to him because he finished it and he kind of did the thing where he stopped for a second and just took it in. Exactly. I got to the rim, I scored. Yeah, that felt good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the thing. I would argue, I have noticed him look tired at times, which it would be shocking if he didn't look like he was tired at various points. But I thought he looked tired sometimes, but there was never a time where I watched him and I was like, oh, he doesn't trust his foot. Or he looked very confident with the types of athletic moves he was making in a way that made me think, let me just put it to you this way, Adam. I watched those two games and I'm like, oh, Jayson Tatum's just back. that was what my thought was. It wasn't like, oh, we're getting this evolutionary post Achilles Jayson Tatum. It was like, oh, Jayson Tatum's back. The Celtics have Jayson Tatum back and now we're in business. That was what I thought watching those two games. And any sort of concerns you have about fit or flow were the same concerns from before the Achilles injury. So to me, he looks fantastic athletically. And if I was a Celtics fan, I'd be feeling ecstatic today.
You got to be, how could you feel anything other than that? It's been a phenomenal year and you just got a guy back. And the only question was, well, how will he look? And while I think it's being a little overstated by some of the analysts around there, he looks like he never missed a step. I think it looks like he's coming back from injury, but he looks like a guy that is well ahead of my expectation for him and will be just a full contributor here as we get to the playoffs and beyond. Let's talk now, though, really quickly about this matchup and about the Cavs, because my question really was, can they move the ball against Boston? And if they can't, can they win? I don't know if they can win unless they can move the ball. They did get the ball popping a little bit more late in the game, but I don't know how much of that was the game was out of reach, because this was like a 25-point game. I don't remember what the biggest lead was, but it was – Boston was in contain mode. We're going to get out of this game, just contain. But can they get downhill and can they get the ball moving against Boston? If the answer is no, I don't know if they can win. I think you're going to have to beat them by getting them into the rotation. And Boston, I think Boston walks away from this game feeling like we were able to contain. They're not. It's like cutting the teeth off the dragon. We're not as scared of them at that point.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is important to remember with Cleveland is if you dig into their numbers, they're kind of similar to OKC, where when they're open, their catch and shoot threes go in. When they're contested, rushed, rotated to, it can kind of suffer. This honestly goes all the way back to last year's postseason run, which was they didn't shoot the ball very well in the postseason, but they weren't getting great looks either. Now, part of that was because Darius Garland was hurt and he was unable to help break the defense down. But to your point, it is fundamentally important for Cleveland for them to break the defense down, to get great looks. Now, I will say they were 1 for 9 on unguarded catch and shoot threes in the first half against Boston yesterday. So like that was the kind of stretch that I was talking about where like it felt like it kind of sapped Cleveland of their confidence because they were just missing so many of these really good looks for like really good shooters too, like Jaylen Tyson wide open above the break. He's been hitting that at like damn near 50% this year and it's off. Like they definitely missed some easy ones in that first half. But the larger issue is in this matchup, I would argue Boston's ball handlers are more comfortable going against Cleveland's perimeter defenders than Cleveland's ball handlers are going against Boston's perimeter defenders. And that's a dynamic that I don't think is going anywhere. One of the things that's kind of unfortunate for Cleveland is like they really only can break you down with their pick and roll guys, Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. They only really have that one way that they can go. And that's such an easy and simple dynamic defensively to game plan for, especially for Boston, because they've had such success with drop coverage this year. And there's been like a drop coverage renaissance around the league. This is something I've noticed. There's so many more teams that are running deeper drop because it just turns out it still works really well as long as you ball pressure and you get over the top of screens. But on the other end of the floor, it's like Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis are really good against small guards, but they're both going to get thrown around like rag dolls against Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. Dean Wade can't guard any of those guys. I think Cleveland's going to have to lean more on guys like Jaylen Tyson and hopefully if Max Strus can come back in this type of matchup because they're going to need trunkier, like stronger, lower center of gravity dudes that can actually beat guys to spots because right now Boston just looks way too comfortable on the ball in this matchup. And that's the thing is like, I don't think Cleveland shot well yesterday, but I also think that Boston got better shots. And so it's going to be the same thing when we talk Knicks-Lakers. Like the Knicks shot really poorly yesterday, but I also thought the Lakers got better shots. You can only blame that so much. There's a certain amount of like this dynamic where our ball handlers look more comfortable is not changing. And so I left that game, Adam. I don't know about you, but I left that game going like, oh, bad matchup for Cleveland.
I think absolutely feel the same way. And here's the reason why, and you kind of hit on it, but I'm going to frame it a different way. They miss shots, but they are a team that I think is very dependent on the rhythm of the shots that they get. I think Denver is this way as well. I just talked about how Boston takes bad shots. Boston also, I said they have a very specific shot diet. Like they know what types of shots they can take, but the shots don't have to be like the table was set this way and a ball came this way and I can take this one, but I can't take that one. Their shots can be bad. They can be contested as long as they're kickouts or as long as you were able to kind of break a guy down and then get the ball here or whatever. Their shots, they know where they're easy to create. They're easy to generate, so to speak, but given their personnel. Cleveland has to break you down and get the ball swinging, and then that's where they're in rhythm. And if you take that away, and I think Boston will always be able to take this away from them, if you take it away, the shots feel different. Even if they're open, they got open in a different way than what they're typically used to. And so their rhythm is naturally going to be different against Boston than it is against other teams. And I think that's why it's different. Ironically, Denver is a team like this as well, where their shots come from their offensive rhythm. But why I think Denver's actually a tough matchup for Boston and Cleveland an easier one is Denver doesn't rely on dribble penetration to get open. And so it completely breaks what the Celtics are great at containing dribble penetration. Denver doesn't use it. And so it's kind of a weird, interesting matchup with them. I thought Schroeder did a good job on Pritchard. Like, here's the notes that probably don't matter, but if you think about a playoffs, Pritchard is a big piece for Boston. He's been really good for him. And I actually thought Schroeder did a really good job of just pressuring him, containing him. It was like speed versus speed, and it didn't end up affecting the game in any way. But there was one thing that stood out to me as I was like, Schroeder seems to be comfortable in that matchup in a way that doesn't always happen to Pritchard.
That's the matchup thing. Like Cleveland's going to be good against teams that rely on small guards. The problem is Cleveland that Boston just doesn't. Like among all the teams in the East, you have Detroit, but it's like it's just Cade. Like they don't have a depth of it. And Cade, I think right now is flawed enough in terms of how inconsistent he is as a jump shooter that there's like some more game plan versatility there. But like you are a team in Cleveland defensively that is built to handle small guards. Why? Because you have small guards that can defend, but you also have rim protection. So they can get up into the basketball while also if you over penetrate, they're equipped to handle you. The one thing that that Cleveland's just not set up for is these teams that rely on the bigger ball handlers. And that again, I do think that having a Max Strus back and like they can, I think we can all agree that Cleveland can play better than they did yesterday. I just think there are problems from that matchup that aren't going away.
All right. Any final thoughts on this one, or we want to move on to these next games?
Is there anything else?
I know I had a ton of notes for this one. We went over a lot, but I did. It was such a fascinating game that I had a page and a half of notes on this one.
Yeah, just James Harden's off-ball defense is the last. I know I mentioned that, but there was a play in the first half where Jaylen Brown's posting up on the right block. Legs did a great job breaking it down on the call, talking about how it was like a 3-quarter front. So when the post-entry pass was made, it was kind of like over the top. And so Jaylen on the catch was able to spin baseline. And when he spun baseline, the entire Cleveland defense reacted to him. But if you watch the possession again, Evan Mobley's right there to help. And James Harden is just sagging 20 feet off of Sam Hauser for no reason. And that there were several sequences in the second half, too, where James just got a little bit iffy with his off-ball defense. And it's one of those things where, like, specifically in this matchup, I don't think James can be as mistake-prone off the ball defensively. I think he's got to be more attentive.
Well, let's take our first break. On the other side, the Pistons have lost 4 in a row. What's the concern level? They lost to Brooklyn, and then they were down 30 to Miami, and then the Spurs and the Rockets. Not in the same tier, at least as evidenced by this weekend's game. We'll get to that on the other side. You have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? How about now? Are you thinking about starting your own business or maybe your own side hustle? Well, Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Shopify even powers the All City merch store. That's right. We have a merch store. Links in the description. We have some really good merch there, including some really nice hats. Shopify's got you covered with website creation, product descriptions, email and social media marketing, and more. They also have AI tools designed to help you maximize sales. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. It's also sunglass season. You know, it's starting to get sunny out. Daylight savings was here yesterday, one of my favorite days of the year. I love it when the sun starts going down at like 7:30 and beyond. I'm telling you, I'm not even joking when I say it's one of my favorite moments of the entire year. But it also means it's sunglass season, so we got you covered because you know when you get sunglasses and you lose them or break them, it almost always happens right away. You feel like, oh my God, what did I do? I just threw money down the drain. Well, not with Shady Rays. They've changed the game. They've got sunglasses that are made for real life. They're good looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. They have a million styles to choose from. But the wild part is if you lose or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So you can wear your sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on a boat, wherever. These are all spring and summer activities, man. I can't believe we're here. We made it. We made it through winter. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. Just go to shadyrays.com and use the code ALLCITY. It's a different code this time. ALLCITY, all one word, ALLCITY. You get 40% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA show. It's me and Jayson Timpf. We got Legler back on Wednesday and Friday this week, and there's some great games this week, man. I'm telling you, every single week I'm looking ahead to our shows and looking at the games leading into them, and I'm like licking my chops. And that was true of this weekend because the Pistons and the Heat played, and there are two teams going in different directions over the last week and a half or so. Pistons lose 110 to 121. This is their 4th straight loss, including blowing a lead, a 20-point lead against the Brooklyn Nets a few days ago. And in this one, they were down 30 points to Miami at one point. Now, Miami has been playing better, but Detroit having such a great year, coming out of the All-Star break and running into their longest losing streak of the season has got to be at least a little bit concerning, or if you ask me, a lot concerning. But what about you, JT? What do you think of this?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that I've been calling out with the Pistons all year is that they win by dominating on the margins. This is a group, it's been well documented. They're not a great half-court offense for obvious reasons. They're not a great jump shooting team. They rely on one singular shot creator, a shot creator at this point that is a very talented player that I believe in the big picture, but he's not. The biggest thing that stood out as a weakness for Cade is that he's not a tight space scorer. Like, he's not a guy that, like, oh, they're packing the paint, these kickouts to these mediocre shooters aren't working. Do I have the ability to go Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for a few minutes and get to the foul line a bunch, or work for little short-range jump shots I can hit at a super high percentage? Like, there's, Cade is just still very much a work in progress as a high-end shot creator. They don't have a secondary shot creator. You can lean on Dennis Jenkins a little bit here and there. You can throw the ball to Tobias Harris from the post, but there's not a lot of really reliable shot creation beyond Cade. And so they're just not a good half-court offense, right? So they have to dominate by dominating the offensive glass, forcing a ton of turnovers and getting out in transition. They're very much a margins team. And in this 4-game losing streak, they're getting outscored in points off of turnovers by 1.8 points per game.
That's like that right there is going to be a death knell for him. Losing the points off of turnovers battle. Before you get into all the other margins, that one is like, okay, they got to win that one.
No, absolutely. That's one where they need to be getting 20 plus points a game, right? Yeah. And then the second chance points, they're getting outscored by 3.8 points per game. They're giving up almost 20 second chance points a game. Now, one of the sneaky things about Detroit is that as good as they are as a rebounding team, they're not a great defensive rebounding team, but some of that is just their emphasis on getting out in transition. They can leak out a little bit, but they have been losing that margin. And then overall fast break points, they're minus 4.5 points per game. So it's like margins that they used to be winning every single game have flipped into margins that they're losing every single game. And when you add in the fact that they're not going to be able to flip that dynamic with the strength of their half-court offense, it's just gonna be a problem that they can't overcome.
You look at this losing streak. So they lose to Cleveland in a close one, 113-109. Then Asar Thompson goes down 2 minutes into their next game. And I think so they lose to San Antonio. San Antonio's beating everybody right now. But then they lose Brooklyn and Miami. I think Asar Thompson, I don't want to put it all on this because I do think a lot of what you're talking about, Detroit wins a lot of what I'll call regular season margins. Those margins matter in the playoffs as well. It's just that in the playoffs, everybody is locked into those margins in a way that they're not always in the regular season. Detroit's always won those. But you lose Asar Thompson, and all of a sudden, the slide started before he went down, but their defense has struggled. And I look at that and go, is he that important athletically and defensively to their point of attack defense? It might be the case that he actually is. Now, I think there was a regression anyway, but when you add a regression defensively and on some of these margins and you lose a guy like that, then I think it really paints how that stretch is going to go. But I do look at this and wonder, I mean, I hate to say this because sometimes it just feels like confirmation bias. A team goes through a rut and you go, there it is. I told you this is what was going to happen, even though they've had a great year. But Detroit does have a hard time winning these like half-court battles and winning these like, the types of things that are going to happen more in the playoffs. So when they start to lose those marginal battles, they start to lose games. If you go to the Miami side, they have 5 wins in a row. They beat Charlotte, who's been great, Detroit, Houston, and it all started when Bam, I don't know if you remember this, back on February 26th, Bam, they lose to Philly, and it was a really bad loss. And Bam is basically like a players-only type situation where he calls everybody out and just is really hard on the team. And since then, I think we have a chart actually. It started before this. This is Bam Adebayo's points trend. You can see he's been trending up over the last, 15 games or so individually. But he calls the team out, and all of a sudden they're playing with a different energy. So, and by the way, I have this great note that I saw on the broadcast. Bam Adebayo is now just the second Heat player to get 10,000 points with the Heat behind Dwayne Wade. Is that kind of crazy?
That is a crazy stat.
Did I get this stat right? I'm pretty sure I got this one right.
How many seasons has he been there now? I gotta look.
I gotta look this up as well here. But anyway, they've won 5 in a row. And is this classic Miami Heat? After the All-Star break, they figure things out, they get intense, and all of a sudden they get hot going into the playoffs where nobody wants to get them in the first round?
9 seasons with Miami already. That should make us feel old. So I think it's a combination of things. They're playing better defense. The increased aggression with Bam, I think, has been good because it's kind of simplified the way that they're attacking. It's a steady diet of Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo, just those two guys just being super, super aggressive. Tyler, too, like I was concerned about him in the early part of the season with the way that he was performing in this new scheme, but he seems to be finding some comfort in it. And he's actually been pretty good as an ISO player this season. And, I've been pleasantly surprised by how effectively he's been able to kind of get into his dribble drive game. It's funny. A lot of his ISOs have been, he's going to get cut off, but he's expecting getting cut off, and he's able to consistently go to either like that step back jump shot in that like kind of short range area, or he'll like kind of step into that Euro and he'll lean back and go to like his floater. But Tyler's been pretty effective in his ISOs as well. And so I think it's a combination of them being healthy, ramping up for the postseason, and then a simplified offensive approach where Bam and Tyler have just been super aggressive. Like Bam hasn't been very efficient in this stretch. It's not like he's hitting a ton of shots relative to the amount he's taking, but he's putting his head down and he's being super, super aggressive. And I think often that ends up simplifying things in terms of rhythm in a way that can be really effective. The Heat are playing some really good basketball right now.
We'll see if this continues. It would be so funny of all years this to be another one of these classic Miami scenarios where they get hot at the end and it's like, oh my God, they get upset and make a run. Yes, by the way, I just confirmed that Bam Adebayo's second leading scorer in Heat history. LeBron James, 7,900 points. Glenn Rice, 92. Alonzo Mourning, 9,400 points. And then Bam Adebayo, 10,001 points. Dwayne Wade, 21,500. So he's way ahead, but that's kind of wild that he is the second all-time scorer in Miami Heat history. I didn't feel like that.
That is a crazy stat.
But also he is like Mr. Heat culture, so it also fits perfectly. Let's go to this other game here, though. The Spurs beat the Rockets. I wasn't planning on watching this one because it wasn't like originally on the docket. But when I saw how lopsided it was, the Spurs right now, I am so impressed with them and what they're able to do. And it's not just Wembanyama, but it is especially Wembanyama. 29 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, 4 blocks. Doesn't really tell the story. He dominated this game. And here's where I'm going to start with you. I felt like a year ago, a guy like Şengün could do some stuff against him that was tough. He's crafty. He's strong. He could bully him. And you know, even though Wemby was great, you could see something in that matchup. Last night, Wemby bullied him. Like, Şengün would try some of the same stuff where he'd go into the post, and you could just see Wemby battle and then contest it or block it in a way, that was like, no, I've leveled up what I do against you. But equally as importantly, Houston has no ability to punish how San Antonio was guarding him. They sagged off of Şengün a lot, dared him to shoot. He didn't want to. And because of that, you just had Wemby playing in the paint defensively the entire night, and there was nothing Houston seemed to be able to do about it.
Speaking of matchups, this is another matchup that I really don't like if I'm Houston. San Antonio, I think, matches up with them extremely well. To your point, you'll still see the occasional possession, like that early second half one where Şengün posts up Wemby on the right block and he just drops his shoulder and he gets like a little hook shot up off the glass. But in this particular matchup, Şengün is borderline problematic on both ends of the floor because San Antonio is consistently attacking him on the other end with guards and switches. I thought they did a lot of damage to Şengün in transition. One of the biggest things that stood out to me in this game is how mistake-prone Şengün is defensively. He had a couple brutally bad transition defense possessions. There was one where he left Julian Champagnie open in the left corner because he went to guard somebody that was already guarded. There was another one where he ran back to pick up the ball, but then ran right behind the guys. So no one else from the Rockets picked him up and he just went all the way down the lane and got a layup. And I'm like, this is borderline Karl Anthony Towns-esque with the way that he can just kind of be out of position by making mental mistakes, not physical mistakes. Because that's the thing that drives me crazy with Şengün is I actually think he moves better than most centers. He should be physically capable of being a good defender. He's just incredibly fundamentally weak. A lot of these plays where he's guarding guards in switches, like Steph Castle or De'Aaron Fox in a switch, he has his stance open and he's lunging out, which just gets him out of position, and then guys can just drive right around him. He's had some brutally bad drop coverage reps. He had a bad one yesterday where he got dunked on by Luke Cornett, where he just tried to back up into him as he was going backwards into his rep. And then again, on the other end of the floor, and I wouldn't just blame Şengün on this. I'd blame Amen Thompson too, although Amen Thompson had a successful scoring game overall yesterday. But San Antonio is so content to just double the ball out of KD's hands and live with the results with Wemby at the rim. And it just works. It works in this particular matchup. And I'm worried about this Şengün thing if I'm the Rockets, because against some of these better teams, he consistently ends up standing out like a sore thumb as the guy that's the problem matchup on both ends of the floor.
I think you're right about this matchup, though, man. It just looks so easy for the Spurs. By the way, 21 threes on 58% shooting. That's going to work. 38 assists. That's going to work. 61 bench points. That's going to work. I think the athleticism gap was noticeable in this game as well. And in particular, I know Reed Shepherd wasn't like the problem in this game, but he was 6 of 15, 3 of 10 from 3, and he does look like there's some games where the athleticism gap for him is a huge concern, and this is one of them. The Spurs are just big on the perimeter. They have so many big wings and guards, and they're all fast and they're all strong, and I thought that it stood out against him in a way that in the playoffs that could be a really a big challenge. But
when their guards are making shots, when their young guards are making shots, you just get to lose. Here's some crazy stats for you real quick, Adam. So they lose by 25 yesterday. They were minus 28 when Şengün was on the floor. So they were plus 3 in roughly, what's that, like 18 minutes when Şengün was off. In the game on January 28th, they lost by 12. They were minus 14 with Şengün, positive with Şengün off the floor.
Man.
In the win, the one time the Rockets beat the Spurs this year, they were minus 2 with Şengün on the floor. And then in the game on November 7th, early in the season, when they lost by 11, they were minus 12 with Şengün on the floor. And in 12 minutes without him, they were plus 1. So literally in all 4 Spurs games this season, the Rockets have been positive when Şengün's been off the floor and just gotten destroyed every time he's been on the floor.
I think there might be something to it. I mean, in that game, he looked completely just bottled up, uncomfortable, and Wemby almost looked, I mean, like I said, Wemby looked like he wanted to let him know, I've leveled up in this matchup. Like, I know what to do. Here's another thing I think about that. So they obviously just sag off him. He doesn't want to shoot the 3. It's going to change their offense, and that caused its own problem. But I keep watching Wemby and just how good he is defensively, and I'm trying to think, where is the vulnerability? One vulnerability I think for him, and it's not even a vulnerability, if you can screen and roll fast. So I'm thinking like a guy like Aaron Gordon, who can, if you use him as the screener and he can release quickly down the lane and get to the rim quickly, that's one area where I think Wemby can be a little bit vulnerable. It's hard to set the table for that. And who are like Capella had a dunk, I think, is what I'm thinking of. Capella gets a screen, rolls really quickly, gets to the rim really quickly, and Wemby covers so much ground and he's so long he almost got there. But it was the one thing where I was like, okay, that's almost how you have to do it. You can't short roll, floater, 2 dribbles, get to the rim and make a move. You have to be quick. I just don't know how many teams have a player that even fits that profile, that could do that. And
to your point, I've noticed that in the Knicks games too with Josh Hart. Like, if you can catch Wemby rather than him waiting at the rim, but rather him rotating to the rim, and then while he's rotating to the rim, if you can get into his body, I think those are the times that you can have some success there. But I mean, Adam, you and I are talking about like some very, very specific situations. And the truth is for the most part, there's literally nothing you can do with the guy.
It's true.
And he's been shooting the 3 super well as of late too. And like Victor's last week was insane. He had that 38 and 16 against the Pistons. He goes for 27 and 10 against the Clippers, 29 and 8 against the Rockets. This last week, he's been killing it, and he's been shooting the 3 super well. He made 10 threes last week. Wemby's turning the corner into playoff ready. Agreed. At this point. It's looking scary.
I know people really were on me last season and in the early parts of this season for, pumping the brakes a little bit on Wemby. I thought he was great, but this idea that, he's taken over the league or whatever, for me, I'm always like, I want to see it first. But I will say, I think he's there now. And now the only question is the playoffs. How will that change things? But I'm watching him right now going, it's on the table for me that we walk out of this playoffs with Wemby as the best player in the world. That's how dominant he is defensively, and offensively he's getting more and more consistent. And so it's on the table that could happen because he is really leveling up. And like I said, I just don't like to give it to guys before it actually happens, but I think it's happening. So, he gets it now.
It's hard to argue.
Here's the last thing I have on the Spurs. How many teams can win both a shootout and a defensive battle? Because they win this game 145-120, and they've won a handful of games that way. They've also won some games in double digits. And I was going through the list of teams that can do it. Boston, Oklahoma City, and I think the Knicks. But the Knicks are like not every time. It's not the same dominant. But they have won some tight games or like low-scoring games, and they've won some shootouts. Past that, I think you're actually getting to more of the like teams that can do it sometimes, but can't do it consistently. I think San Antonio is comfortable winning a shootout, comfortable winning if it becomes a grind.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It really just comes down to you. If you're going to be able to win both ways, you've got to be able to be a truly elite unit on both ends of the floor, and that's just something that the Spurs are absolutely capable of doing. I think I still have my general concerns surrounding whether or not these guards can be successful in certain matchups, like we saw in the Knicks matchup in particular, like when you can put bigger physical defenders on their guards, they can slow down a little bit. Wemby, obviously, if the shot's not going, there's a lower ceiling there on offense. So like it's one of those things where I think they have to be able to win that way if they're going to get where they want to go, because I don't think their offense is going to be there for them every single night anyway.
So lastly, the Spurs' upcoming schedule this week: Boston, Denver, Charlotte, Clippers.
Wow.
Really good slate. They've won 15 of their last 16. You get an impressive win against Boston. You know, that all eyes are going to be on that game with Tatum's return and it just being, a potential finals preview. I wish Denver wasn't on the second night of a back-to-back. They play Houston right in front of that. It'll be their third game in 4 nights, and they're already just banged up and everything else. But still, you know what? It's an important matchup. If you get all 4 of these wins and you extend this to 19 of 20, I might get reckless with my San Antonio games. Every time I watch them, I'm like, they got all the ingredients. I don't know what to say.
Boston has had some issues with teams that can run good deep drop coverage. Denver, famously, in that blowout a couple weeks ago, they had Jokic sitting way back on ball screens. I think if Jared Allen was healthy yesterday, that's a look we would have seen a little bit more of. So the one thing I think would be the thing I'll have my eye on in that matchup is like, what's going to happen if the Celtics just sit Wemby back and Garza's, not hitting his threes, and Keita obviously isn't a shooter. And if San Antonio's perimeter defenders do a good job of getting up into the basketball and they chase and funnel, I'm a little that's just something I'll have my eye on. I'm really curious to see how Boston's defense will look against a good Wemby deep drop in that game, because I think that's going to be a tough challenge for them.
I'm telling you, this week is incredible in the NBA.
Yeah.
Lakers 110, Knicks 97. Knicks shot just 24% from 3. I don't know what to make of this one. Denver blows out the Lakers. The Knicks blow out the Nuggets. The Lakers blow out the Knicks.
Yeah, a little transitive property action.
Yeah, what's going on here? But I didn't catch this game, but I'm just looking at the box score and trying to make sense of how the Knicks could shoot so poorly against the worst defense in the NBA. I kid, not the worst, but not a great defense.
So the Knicks didn't shoot well. The Lakers did play their best defensive game of the season in general. So there's 2 ways to look at it. So the Knicks go 2 for 12 on unguarded catch and shoot threes in this game, which on the one hand is a very poor shooting performance, but on the other hand, they didn't get too many of them. I thought the 34? Lakers did do a really good job of defending Jalen Brunson in particular. I thought it was the best combination for the Lakers this season of star shot creation, role players hitting shots, and just overall defensive effort. Those 3 things just came together in a way that all season it's been 1 or 2 instead of all 3 that they've had issues with. And so they played their first complete game. They mentioned this on the broadcast, and we had talked about it a lot on our Lakers Collective pod last week, but the Lakers had lost 12 out of 13 games against teams that had at least 60% win percentages before that game. So that's why, you get a win, the Knicks don't shoot well. No one's going to suddenly call the Lakers a contender or anything. I did think one thing stood out from that game, though, that I think is worth digging into. I don't think the Lakers are better without LeBron. That's stupid.
I was wondering if we're going to go here.
Opinion. However, I do think Austin needs to be their second option. I think the most important trend from that game is by getting LeBron out for a couple games, you were able to feed Austin a bunch of extra usage, which allowed him to build rhythm. Austin wasn't playing well since he came back from his calf injury. Everyone wants to be like, oh, he wasn't getting his touches. It's like, yeah, but when he was getting his touches, it wasn't going good. So getting LeBron out allowed them to force feed the ball to Austin quite a bit. He was able to build a rhythm. To me, the ideal version of the Lakers is Luka's your number 1, Austin's your number 2. LeBron's primarily a screener / play finisher. And then if LeBron gets favorable matchups, I like him in the post. That's something I'd continue to feed. But I do think that the best version of the Lakers involves Austin being your secondary ball handler. I thought his passing and pick and roll was brilliant yesterday against the Knicks. I thought it was his best game since he came back from his calf injury.
I'm impressed with how much LeBron has taken a backseat to Luka. Obviously Luka's a better player at this stage, but it's still hard for a guy like LeBron. But maybe it is possible for him to even adjust to make Austin Reeves more comfortable and to your point, make that team make a little bit more sense. The last one I have for you here, the Suns beat the Hornets 111-99 thanks to their big three. Devin Booker goes for 30. Steady Gillespie goes for 25. Jalen Green goes for 24. I'm kind of surprised by this outcome just because the Hornets have been so good, but any just thoughts on the outcome of this game?
Yeah, first of all, Phoenix's defense was just incredibly impressive in this one. They did a great job pressuring the ball, which is something like I was talking about this after the Celtics got their ass beat by the Hornets last week. Like you have to dislodge the Hornets with ball pressure up front because their ball handlers are all a little bit slight. And then the Suns, every year there's like 2 or 3 teams that scream out to me as like the best rotation teams in the league, like the best teams at flying around and communicating with each other when they do end up in rotation. There were so many brilliant rotation sequences by the Suns in this game. I thought their defense was phenomenal. Jalen Green had a 20-point first half. The thing with Jalen Green is when he's got his step back three going, he's just borderline impossible to guard. It's even last year in Houston. That was the thing with Jalen Green. It was like, if you had his step back three going, he was getting 30, but if he didn't have a step back three going, he was getting 17, you know what I mean? So like that was kind of the up and down with Jalen Green, but Jalen Green has step back three going. Colin Gillespie in the second half hit a bunch of big threes against drop coverage. Devin Booker obviously played great. I thought Kamamala has continued to look good with Mark Williams out. In general, I just thought it was a really impressive win for a Phoenix team that continues to look super feisty even without Dillon Brooks. And
they have to keep winning like this to stay afloat. I mean, Denver, the Lakers, they're within striking distance. I mean, it's not, Denver, I think, Denver this week, Jamal Murray, we'll see if he ends up playing tweaked an ankle. They have Oklahoma City, Houston, San Antonio in the span of 4 days. It's very possible right now with how Denver's playing and just how banged up they've been, getting guys back from injury, but we'll see how they play. It's very possible Denver loses all 3 of those this week. I would not be surprised at all. And you could find a situation where Denver falls to the 7. I think they'll climb out of it at the end of the season. I think they're going to go on a run where they get a very home-heavy stretch. But, it's still a psychological boost if you stay afloat during this Dillon Brooks situation.
Dude, Nuggets fans are having the season from hell.
It's the worst.
When I saw that Jamal Murray injury, I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. Like, this is actually
that quickly
crazy.
Into the return. I'm telling you, people don't realize November 12th, Denver's had multiple starters out. You finally get them all back, and it lasted less than 1 half before another starter gets hurt. It was unbelievable. It just feels at this moment where I turn on games waiting. I turn on Nuggets games the way I go to play pickup. I'm waiting
what's
for
going to happen wrong today.
Yeah, what's going to happen wrong this time? Like what's going to hurt at the end of this? That's how
Did you go to the run yesterday?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah,
Daylight savings, come on.
I had to miss it because of my visceral illness, which bummed me out, but I was wondering if you were there.
No. I got one last one for you really quickly, and I'm only bringing this up because the haters will come out of the woodwork if I don't mention it. Paolo Banchero, 33 points on 12 of 16 shooting. Yeah. 3 of 6 from 3. He had 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Huge game from him against the Milwaukee Bucks. People think I hate Paolo. I don't hate Paolo. I love big men, skilled big men in the NBA. And when they don't reach their potential, it frustrates me. That's my take on Paolo. Is I like him. I want him to be the player I think he is supposed to be. So it has nothing to do with hate. I will give him a shout out for beating the lowly Milwaukee Bucks, but nonetheless, that's a phenomenal stat line from him and a very efficient 33 points.
He's been very good for like 3-4 weeks now. Paolo is one of those players that, to me, the potential is tantalizing, and I can never jump off the Paolo bandwagon. But then, like, you'll have stretches where you'll watch him where for a month straight he'll just be an incredibly frustrating basketball player. That's like, you hate his floor game and the way he's attacking the defense, the types of jump shots that he settles for. But like when things start to click for him and he's like really attacking, taking the right kinds of jump shots that are closer to the basket, taking the easy reads that are available to, like, there's a version of Paolo that's like, oh my God, we can't handle this guy. He's just too much of a physical monster. And I think part of the thing that's helped is he's been able to stay healthy and actually stay on the floor for a few months in a row now, which has allowed him to build rhythm. And I think when he gets derailed by an injury, it just kind of makes him start that process over from step one, and then it'll take him 2 more months to kind of figure it out. But Paolo's playing good basketball right now.
And the Magic have won 4 in a row, so they're on a little bit of a run here. Hit that outro music for us, Atticus. Great show today, man. Lots of games. I just feel like this is where we're at in the NBA schedule right now, that every day when I look at this schedule of who's playing, I'm like, man, there's some good ones. Tonight we get 76ers Cavs, we get Nuggets Thunder, and Knicks Clippers. So some good ones. And then on Tuesday, Legs will be back Wednesday. So what games will we be talking about? Well, I don't know, probably Celtics Spurs. That'll probably be a phenomenal game. Timberwolves also play the Lakers, and a couple other good ones. Hornets Blazers are in there. So good games in the association every single night. Hey, you had a Jordan-like flu game today, Tim.
We got through. I get it. I have one more recording here at the top of the hour, and then I'm going to lay down the rest of the day and get rested up. But I feel like by tomorrow I should be back on my feet. That's the goal.
I hope you feel better. Legler back rest of the week, everybody. Make sure you're subscribed and do us a favor. Hit that like button on the way out.
We all silly like the mayor.